Kay from the Arcadia Public Library, and welcome to Funology, a program where we show you a project, all the materials you'll need, and the simple step-by-step instructions for doing it at home. Today I'm going to show you a fun experiment about buoyancy. So let's get started. In this video, we're going to do two buoyancy experiments. The first is to test whether increasing the density of water helps an object to more easily float in that water. You'll need a cup of water, quite a bit of salt, a measuring cup, a spoon, and a nice fresh egg. Let's go ahead and do our experiment. First thing you want to do is take your egg, and we're going to place it in the water to see if it floats or sinks. Which do you think? If you guess that it would sink, you're correct. For the next part of our experiment, we're going to take the egg out of the water and add salt. Adding salt to the water is going to make it more dense, and it will affect how buoyant an object is in that water. So measure out about a 1/4 cup of salt. This is a 1/2 cup measure, so I'm going to fill it about halfway full. You don't want to put too much salt in there because there comes a point at which it just won't dissolve. And we do want to have all the salt, or as much of it as possible, dissolve. So take your spoon and stir it up. This will help it to dissolve more quickly. Keep stirring. And once you feel like you've stirred enough, go ahead and let the water sit for a while. That way the excess salt will settle at the bottom and our water will be more clear. So I've let the water sit, and now let's go ahead and put our egg back in and see if it floats. And there you can see that it does float. Now that we've made our water more dense, the egg becomes more buoyant. Now it's your turn to experiment with this. Try adding the egg to warm water and see if that takes less salt or more salt. Maybe you could use a different liquid like orange juice or apple juice or milk and see if that makes a difference too. Have fun with this. Now let's move on to our second experiment, which involves learning about water displacement. The materials you're going to need are foil, tape, a container of water where the water is all the way to the top, a larger container that you can put that smaller container inside, a block of wood or some other light object, and some pennies. The first step is to take your block of wood or other light object and place it in the water. Do you see the water that spilled out of the small container? Even though the block of wood floated on the water, it still needed a small amount of space in the pan, so it caused a small overflow. What do you think would happen if you used a heavier object? Let's do an experiment to test that. Now it's time to use your foil. Cut a small piece of foil and shape it into a raft or boat. Think about what would be the best shape for holding as many pennies as possible. I'm just folding my foil into a very simple raft. Nothing scientific about it. I just want to make the sides so that it will hold the pennies and keep the water out. Now take another piece of foil, a larger one, and create a second raft. Now you'll notice that I have not used any Scotch tape on my rafts. That might be a good idea for you to try that though. Scotch tape would help it to stay together. It might make it more sturdy. You could also perhaps put some Scotch tape on the bottom. Think it might make it more waterproof? As you can see, my first raft did not quite fit in the pan, so I'm going to have to fold it again so that it can fit in my pan. This might actually be good because the sides are going to be thicker, and it's possible that that will help it to stay together more, keep some of the water out as I add my pennies. We'll have to experiment with it and see. Once you have your second boat all ready to go ahead and set it aside. We'll use that one later. Now we're going to proceed with the experiment. Take your stash of pennies and begin adding the pennies into your boat or raft. You can see that I'm not adding them all in one big pile. I'm trying to kind of disperse the load. My goal is to try to keep the raft afloat as long as I can and adding as many pennies as I can. And we think about the concepts of buoyancy as to how much weight is going in each spot. That's the end of our experiment. As you can see, 1 penny going into the water, of course, just sinks to the bottom. Why do you think that we could put so many pennies onto the raft when 1 penny just sinks straight to the bottom? Okay, now it's time for you to use that second, bigger foil raft that we made earlier to see how many pennies you can put on it before it sinks. Do you think you'll be able to add more or fewer pennies? And why do you think that is? Do you think your raft would be able to remain afloat longer if you added salt to the water? As with the egg and saltwater experiment, I encourage you to try this raft experiment with other materials. You could make the raft out of different types of paper, combine paper and foil, use craft sticks or any other building materials you can think of. Try varying the size of your container and the type of liquid that you put in it. Maybe you could challenge a friend to a contest to see who could build the best raft that would hold the most pennies before it sinks. Have fun, and I'll see you next time on Funology. Bye-bye.